My apologies here. Okay. Councilmember Schaefer,
Here.
Councilmember McHenry,
Here.
Councilmember Hoag,
Here.
Councilmember Naplin, Councilmember Langle.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving on for additions or corrections to the agenda, please add payroll for the amount of November 1st through 15th in the amount of $293,803.03, and claims in the amount of $597,708.57. With that, do we have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
So moved. Second, McHenry.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Hoag and a second by Councilmember McHenry to approve this evening's council agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Can I make one?
Aye.
Sorry, one of the things we realized today, and I forgot to catch you, was that we should probably do the levy first on our unfinished business before we do the mid-buy, because if you don't pass it, well, you need to pass it or change. If you make any changes to it, it has to then be reflected, and we wouldn't be able to pass the other one. So I don't think that's will happen, but I just want to throw that out there.
Okay.
We should.
Thank
So
you.
we'll switch one and two under unfinished business.
Yes. Yeah.
So is that acceptable to council?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Seeing none, then no objections. All those approving this evening's council agenda, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no.
Thank you.
Motion passes. And with that, do we have a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda?
So moved, Hoag.
Thank you.
And second, McHenry.
We have a motion by Councilmember Hoag, a second by Councilmember Naplin to approve this evening's consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, we move on to comments from the audience. We do have a couple of participants. I believe one of them at least does have a submitted written comment, and I'll leave it up to that individual if they want to speak or have the letter to council read into the record. And then there's one other individual. And so if you would like to speak, please, the clerk will elevate you to an attendee. And then you can unmute yourself and provide your name and address and have 3 minutes to speak. We'll give Ms. Goodland a minute to do that. And we've got 2 more attendees that need to be elevated. Ms. Goodwin, are you able to elevate the other 2?
It's just saying more and then promote to panelists, but it's not moving them over.
Okay, then I will break protocol and send each of them a quick note.
I think they have to accept the invitation, so they might not want to talk as well.
Okay, we have to accept the invitation. Okay, and it looks like they actually can chat. So if there's any person that is on the attendees that does want to chat, then just go ahead and pop it in that box. So with that, we had an email from a Ms. Staples. I see that she's been elevated to an attendee, and so I want to give that opportunity to either speak by voice, or we can have the clerk read your letter into the record.
I'm happy to speak.
All right, thank you. Please go ahead.
So I don't know if the letter was submitted as part of the packet, but I had requested to rent the depot building from December 27th through December 30th. And I'm told that the mayor had determined that the depot was closed on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I understand that this is a policy that's been in effect for a significant time and had more shutdown and COVID initial reasons. At this point, I honestly haven't gotten a really good response other than we're just doing it. Why the only community space that is left in the city, with the other three currently being unrentable and being used for other purposes or closed, cannot be open during business hours on the 2 extra days that I'm looking for that week. So I just want to rent the depot for 4 days, and it's closed on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I wasn't getting a good response. And so I wanted to elevate this to the full group and be able to see if there's a reason we can't have a community event at the depot in a community space during business hours from Monday through Thursday, the last week of the December.
Thank you. And so Mr. Laniszewski or Mr. Oppel, you're welcome to actually respond to that under our current existing COVID policy.
I mean, we can talk about it. The reasoning behind it is because on Tuesdays and Thursdays are opportunities for us to be able to clean the building so that in between uses on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, they might be able to get cleaned again. We also have the weekend we could, if something was being used on Friday. And so unless we feel that we don't need to be doing deep cleanings of the buildings in between uses, and we're also creating a sort of a precedent that we would stop doing deep cleanings or we would do it for one group, I think it just leads to a bad situation that we're not able to do cleanings. That's our main reason.
Thank you, Mr. Oppel.
What do you mean by deep cleanings? Because there's a level to which schools are open, churches are open, bars are open. I'm asking for the depot to be open, so I'm not sure what level of cleanliness needs to be done.
Mr. Laniszewski, please go ahead.
Sure, and I'm not sure what the citizen does or doesn't understand or know, but we do not clean that in-house. We use a contractor. So we have not tried to or had reason to or been directed to expand the use of the space and arrange additional cleaning. So that's where we're at with how and why. So I'm sorry.
And they clean it in the AM?
I'm sorry, we're getting a dialogue. Public comment is not for discussion. I let our staff answer the questions appropriately. And again, happy to talk offline. We also have staffing issues where we are understaffed in general to be able to handle facility rentals at this time, and that has been explained. So as we've also, staff has shared, we will be reevaluating our policies as things change. And I think that is not uncommon. We are far from the only city that are in this current position. So thank you, and happy to talk more offline. With that, is there anyone else that would like to speak for public comment this evening? Great, seeing none, thank you. And thank you again, Ms. Staples, for coming with your concerns. We'll go ahead and move on to scheduled items. First off is Mayor's report. So last night we had the Snoqualmie Valley Governments Association meeting. The Executive Director of Puget Sound Regional Council was there and provided a good update. The group also gave a head nod to a legislative agenda, which includes our Highway 203 corridor study. It was well attended. The Snoqualmie tribe did a fantastic job of providing meals for everyone that was able to attend, and overall a good event. Thank you to council members McHenry and Hogue. I did not see anyone else on there. McHenry, Hogue, and Napland for attending. Didn't see anybody else's name, so I don't think everyone else was able to attend last night, but thank you for being there. Last week, we started at the mayors of King County Council District 3 started a new group where we will be meeting on a regular basis to discuss district priorities for the county council. Part of our goal is to elevate especially some of our smaller city issues and build support from our like cities in our region and help move those forward since we do have a new county council member coming on board. And then just to let folks know, I did share it at the SVGA last night, but the governor's office has a new King County liaison. So I did have the pleasure of having a meeting with him the other day and discussing in particular our transportation needs. And it does sound like transportation is going to be a focus with the infrastructure bill that was approved by Congress, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on the state to do something as well. So that provides an opening, and once council approves the legislative agenda this evening, I'll be setting up another meeting with him to talk more in depth about the needs of our city, and happy to invite council members along to that. Finally, to toot the horn of our wastewater treatment plant, our operators did receive an outstanding wastewater treatment plant award from the Department of Ecology. And this is a big deal because they are recognizing our plant as one of the best run wastewater treatment plants in the state. And I think it goes to show the forethought of putting the new technology in when they did 15, 16 years ago, as well as the commitment and dedication of the team at the wastewater treatment plant. They don't like to be recognized publicly, so I won't share their names and just leave it at that and respect their wishes, but wanted to share that with council as well. And with that, my report is done. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to council reports and start with committees first. So first up is Finance and Administration.
Thank you, Mayor. We met today. It was a good meeting. We were able to get through a number of items quickly. One of the first things we talked about is the fee ordinance that's before us this evening, and the desire to get the fee adjustments on a standard schedule cycle so that it would be easier to monitor. We talked a little bit about some of the preliminary responses from the state auditor. The first one was that under the RCWs, we are required to list all the contracts we enter into in a given year and have those posted. Our Director of Public Works is already working on this, and we expect to have a way to do that. It's unfortunate that we don't have technology to make that simpler at this time, but Public Works is already on top of it. The other thing that we talked about was that in the past, there was a lot of paper used to document utility billing adjustments, and that was not handled in a consistent way. And the long shot of it is that it's been corrected. Our Director of Finance has figured out a way to manage this in absence of more technology. And so that audit issue is under correction. We have talked about today's budget, the two positions that have been deleted, and the two positions that will have hiring in April. Funding for those two positions has been adjusted in the biennial budget revisions that you'll be looking at tonight. There has also been related prorations for the distribution of overhead expenses. This in part has resulted in the general fund having a decrease of $10,000 in expense. The last item that was related to the budget tonight is that our 2021 truck is now included in the asset management plan for replacements. We talked about on-call contracts. That will continue to be a challenge given that we have a shortage of staff. We know that hearing examiner will be needed for community development. Public Works and community development are working together to issue RFPs. The target for that is March, which would be absolutely awesome. Councilmember Naplin reported that it was her understanding that North Bend might be interested in coordinating ARPA assistance with our city, possibly others. And the last thing is that we had continued discussion of procurement and also the municipal financial analysis RFP. And one of the things that I brought up at the meeting is the possibility of increasing the funding for the municipal financial analysis. And I will talk about that further in the meeting. So that was the upshot of it. Productive meeting, and thanks for the opportunity to report.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the Finance Committee? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to land use with Chair Hoag.
Next land use meeting is on Wednesday. I don't know if we narrowed down a time. I'm thinking 10 o'clock, but do you remember, Councilmember Lingle, do you remember if we have a time for that or not? I should have looked that up. For land use.
No, I didn't book it yet.
Okay. I'll let you guys know in case you want to be aware of the time, but I think it'll be Wednesday morning. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Public Safety with Chair Brudnicki.
We did not have a meeting, so there's nothing to report this week.
Thank you. And Public Works with Chair McHenry.
No meeting or report this time.
And on the ad hoc committees, council procedures or human services?
I have a
Member Hoag?
Thank you. So we did have a meeting last week with Councilmember McHenry, Councilmember Brudnicki, and our city administrator, Duvall, sorry. And we got a lot done. We got through chapters 9, 10, and we kind of came up with a game plan for chapter 8, which includes putting in the code of conduct that Councilmember McHenry and I had worked on in the past, kind of plugging it into chapter 8. And then our next meeting will be the December 13th. And since it's Councilmember Brudnicki's last ad hoc meeting with us, we're going to spend that time kind of trying to get some more history from her on some of the topics that we're going to be discussing are social media, ombudsman policy, and code of conduct is kind of what we want to focus on. But we just want to make sure that we can, while she is still here, get the history behind all of this. So that's it for this meeting, but we're really coming close to being done with this. So thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to just council general reports. Did anyone have anything they wanted to report this evening? Councilmember Naplin?
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly recognize Mike Remington for the service that he so generously and just, I don't know, I'm really going to miss him, and I don't even have the words to say. And I hope before the end of the year or shortly thereafter, we can have a time to recognize all the contributions to the city, to the council. Anyway, I don't always have the most eloquent way to say things, and he always did. And so we're really going to miss him, and I hope we can do something for him. And in addition to that, it occurred to me that perhaps we could have a farewell to King County Council member Kathy Lambert. She has served our city diligently for 2 decades, and probably beyond that with her political career. And I just would really like to recognize her at some point. if we could. And so I'm not sure if who would coordinate that or who I need to talk to get something like that for both Mike Remington and Kathy Lambert. I have more to say, but what was that?
Just me and our city administrator.
Okay, perfect. And then I also wanted to report that I attended the Outdoor Recreation Action Team. And one thing that was discussed, we went around the room and talked about all the different projects that were going on. And what I noticed, you know, not just in this meeting, but in prior meetings, but that there's a lot of interjurisdictional projects going on in the Upper Snoqualmie Valley, and not quite as many down here in Duvall. And the group generously offered, what if we had a meeting and started brainstorming down there in the Duvall area, in the greater Duvall area. We have Cherry Creek Falls, we have Duvall Park, we have City of Duvall. There's a lot of different organizations that potentially could provide grants or funding that could match other grants we had to make some of our projects more viable. Anyway, I was pretty excited that others were excited about talking about Duvall. And I hope we can take advantage of that. And if that gets scheduled, I would definitely hope we could have some extra staff support at that meeting. And then let's see, I feel like I had one other thing I was going to report on. Oh, I was going to invite everyone to the SVGA, which 2 days ago that would have been appropriate, but today it's something that happened in the past. But I want to thank everyone that attended. I thought it was a really fantastic meeting with a game plan to start a focused group to look at our transportation issues and really trying to bring that to the forefront as a group effort. So I was very excited about that. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to city administration update with City Administrator Apple and Director Thomas.
So you'll see the first thing is, it was touched on in the COW a few days ago, is that our meetings are set for the 7th and the 21st of December. 21st is getting fairly close to Christmas. I can report that I don't think we have any, maybe we have one director who will be available for that. So I would ask you guys to consider maybe having a special meeting on the 14th and cancel the 21st, just because of its proximity to Christmas and so forth. The city clerk is meant to start with remote work on the 29th of November. That's a Monday, right after Thanksgiving. The next thing is that while the valley has been consistent flooding past few weeks, 203 has remained open the entire time, as you all know, and the police department managed traffic with a pickle on and 124th Street opened yesterday. So that's those are both good, and I don't think we have any expectation that we're going to get more rain that will close it in the near future. So hopefully that'll stay where it is. The city has did have several wind events over the past week or so. We did have trees come down within the city. A home in North Hill neighborhood did receive damage to the extent that they had to be evacuated. And the trees were in the property of the homeowners association of that thing. They were not in public property, but we did help to look at them to make sure that they're in good shape. I don't know if Laura or Steve can say anything more to those, but I think we did respond to a question that we had from the neighborhood.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Langell.
Thank you. To our city administrator, you mentioned changing the meeting to December the 14th. What do you need from council in terms of making that decision to move that item along?
I think we need consensus that you all would feel that's a good time. And that, you know, that the mayor or once you have a pro tem, you could have a special meeting on the 14th. We also need consensus that the 21st be canceled, and we publish that it's canceled.
So is that something
I guess-
administration would initiate then, or?
We
Or
can't
we-
initiate anything, it's council.
Oh, no, I know, but I'm saying, what specific steps would you like us to take, Mayor? Is there something you would like us to do?
So I think I just need to know, does anyone object to having a meeting on the 7th? Or, I'm sorry, the 14th? Councilmember Schaefer and McHenry? Oh, you're on mute, Councilmember.
I'm actually not available on the 14th. I am on the 21st, however.
Councilmember McHenry?
I'm the opposite of that, but I was wondering, I mean, do we have a bunch of stuff that needs to get done on the 14th? You know, if we just were to cancel our 21st meeting and let, you know, everyone enjoy the end of the month, or do we have a ton of stuff that needs to get approved before January?
I'll chime in that, and I think Laura has more specific. There are things that if we get them approved on December 7th, we will be in good shape. Although when is the we also have public hearings, and I think they're going to happen on the 7th, which means you would have to vote that evening on the same thing that you had a public hearing, which is not, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just to understand there's not another meeting later in the month in which to make a decision about the public hearing that had happened during that day.
All right, Councilmember, I'm sorry, Ms. Thomas first, and then Councilmember Napland.
One of our public hearings that we rescheduled for the December 7th meeting is also relies on a planning commission recommendation. So if that comes in before, then it would be possible to complete those items. But we also may have contract amendments as well. And so that could lead to a second meeting as well.
Councilmember Napland?
Thanks. Is it possible that we could have a tentative meeting if needed on the 14th and then not plan to have it, but only utilize that meeting if needed? So don't set anything up to be expected to be approved only. Is that something we could do?
Yeah, if we don't need the meeting, we don't advertise for it. So if we've got consensus now, it sounds like we've got one council member that can't be there on the 14th. If we have consensus now, that gives staff plenty of direction. And if there is not a meeting needed after the 7th, it just simply won't be advertised as a special meeting. So it's pretty simple. But is there consensus to cancel the 21st meeting? I know that there will not be directors in town. I'm not in town. Seeing head nods, so we have consensus for that. So we can put notice out for that. Great. Any other questions for our city administrator? Councilmember Napland?
Yeah, it was interesting that we received that public comment. I hadn't heard that there was anyone interested in using that building, so that's helpful to hear. I received a question about the visitor center, about its availability into the future. And I'm going to direct that person to City Administrator Oppel. So is that something that administration will give us an update on about the status of our buildings, that if there's a time frame for changing? Because I guess I'm just thinking if it's the same person renting it for an entire week and not switching users, would it, you know, do you have to have someone come in and clean? I'm not sure. I'm just kind of brainstorming out loud, and I no disrespect to what has been planned, but is anyone currently using it Monday, Wednesday, Friday that requires us to be having someone clean Tuesday, Thursdays? Is someone using it Monday, Wednesday, Friday?
Yes, we have some nonprofit folks that are using it. And the issue again is the outside part of it is having the outside person come in and clean. That person is not based in Duvall. So that's additional expense to the city based on our normal cleaning schedule, et cetera. As we look at what it is going to look like to reopen, all of those things will be reevaluated, and making, between our public works director and city administrator and public health guidance, and our staffing levels will determine when we can reopen realistically to more normal rentals. I think of note, the fact that we are still meeting virtually is a strong signal that perhaps it's not quite time yet to be opening our spaces to the public on a widespread basis, and that cleaning is important. So I think we're getting close, but we're just not there yet. I don't know if Director Laniszewski wanted to chime in or not, but I see a hand from Councilmember Rudnicki and a hand from Councilmember McHenry as well.
I'll wait for Mr. Laniszewski to say whatever he needed to say before I ask my question.
I was going to wait for you. See who would waited longest. There's not a lot of clear guidance. I know there's a need. We're trying to be flexible with allowing the nonprofits to use the space now, and they don't rent it for full days at a time. It's hours a block. So, cleaning is fine. It is one thing. I've heard plenty of support for, in a sense, operating that building at a loss. I'm not worried about that, but it's, organizing and making sure the cleanings can happen if that's the desire, and then just having that done. So I think the guidance we had heard too, they were requesting a lot of the nonprofits, NA, AA, those types of things who need the space for meetings to happen. That was the original desire. We haven't, and I don't know a lot, as Sherry is most of the communication to the outside world come through her now for the buildings. So she asks once in a while when calls come in, and I haven't heard much. So we can certainly ask about those operations and start to move forward. But it's still a little bit of a weird world. We're not open fully ourselves either to the public. So that's all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Brodnicki.
So speaking from a for-profit organization, a business, because I've utilized the one of the centers, and I still think the fees for rental are very low. And considering that you're doing all this cleaning service, do you think in the future renting to us profitable people, are you going to work on the fee so it's a little better for public use of space, public funds? I think something to consider. I mean, it is the public space. And I as a person who rents it knows that it's very low. So considering you have to make more investment in the cleaning of it. That's my question.
I don't know if that's directed at me or the mayor. I think there's if I were to answer, I would say that there is a general concept in public affairs and in public administration that for-profits should pay somewhere near the going rate that they would. Maybe they get a somewhat of a discount because they're not getting exactly a commercial space, but they should get more towards what is the going rate for commercial rates. And nonprofits, by their community orientation, and the reason why they're given special protections under tax law is because they provide a public service. So I think that they should get a discounted rate in comparison. So I haven't looked into this, what the rates are right now, but my take would be that is normal and accepted practice, that there is a distinction between for-profits and non-for-profits.
Thank you. Councilmember McHenry.
Yeah, just two quick things. One is the person who spoke regarding that subject mentioned they had sent a letter. So I was just curious if we could get a copy of that. And I'm happy to also just follow up with a quick email after the meeting and just request to read that. Or
that letter was sent to all of council.
Was it? Okay,
I believe so. If not, I'll double check.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure it was sent to everyone. And if not, then I'll make sure it gets forwarded to you.
Okay, I'll double check. And then my other question was, You know, I don't know what use that they needed it for or what they were doing. Have you guys had conversations with them, just seeing like if they want it? I don't know if maybe it's just the timing that's the main issue, but if they wanted to foot the bill for an extra cleaning or something like that to get it turned over faster, or if it's possible, again, with that in mind, you know, they might be willing to have one of our other buildings cleaned if we're not using them for staff. I don't know. Have you just talked through different scenarios with them, or are we just pretty much just kind of saying no because it doesn't work with the depot building?
I would say right now we've chosen to not rent out any other structure. That's the first question. Second question was extra cleanings. Not necessarily opposed to having that, but right now we're operating for nonprofits. I'm not sure if this is a nonprofit or not. It looks like a activity group for kids' activities. Maybe it's nonprofit. I'm not sure. And then it is if we can get it cleaned with our contractor. And there are other contractors out there. So if we can't get it with one, we can get it with another, but we just haven't looked into that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. All right, not seeing any other questions. So we'll move back to presentations, of which we have none. We do not have any public hearings this evening. Those had to be moved because of noticing timelines. So we'll move on to new business. The first item is Agenda Bill 21-110A. That's the Mayor Pro Tem appointment. So with the departure of Mayor Pro Tem Remington, the council now needs to select someone to be the Mayor Pro Tem through the first meeting of the year. And this is an important role because if I get hit by a bus, that person is who is legally in charge of the city at that point. So council, be happy to accept nominations. Councilmember Hoag, you had your hand up.
Thank you so much. I would like to nominate Councilmember McHenry.
Second.
Councilmember, you're on mute.
Thank you. I'll second that nomination.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of approving Amy McHenry as interim Mayor Pro Tem, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Congratulations, Amy and Councilmember. Looking forward to working with you over the next month and a half.
Thanks, everyone.
So you'll get to run the next committee of the whole. So moving on to Agenda Bill 21-112A, Police Department Contract Amendment to Prosecuting Services for discussion and/or decision. Lieutenant Sabrin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. In September of 2017, the city entered into a contract with Lynn Moberly for prosecutor services. From the onset of the agreement, the city has had an ILA with Northeast District Court for court services. As you know, beginning January 1st of 2022, the city will enter into a separate ILA with the Issaquah Municipal Court for court services while terminating the ILA with Northeast District Court. As part of that transition, cases that were filed at Northeast District Court prior to the transition will continue to be heard at Northeast District Court, which will require Lynn Moberly to appear at an additional calendar per month at a minimum. One calendar is Issaquah Municipal and one at Northeast District Court for cases that are still pending there. To compensate for the extra calendar, she is asking for $500 for all additional calendars scheduled, which are beyond the one per month scheduled at Issaquah Municipal. In addition, the city's contract with Lynn Moberly has been for criminal cases only at Issaquah Municipal Court. City's contract with her to represent them when defendants hire private attorneys to contest infractions. If the infraction is found committed, the city gets revenue back from the court. Lynn Moberly is asking for an additional $250 per month as a flat fee to provide that additional service. The cost of this contract amendment for prosecutor services has been included in the 21-22 biennial budget amendments. And this reduction in court costs associated with the court transition is anticipated to make up for these additional prosecution costs. That's what I have.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, are you ready to vote on this evening? And if so, I would be happy to entertain a motion to suspend the rules. Councilmember Schaefer.
I move we suspend the rules for this agenda bill.
Second, McHenry.
Great. We have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer, a second by Councilmember McHenry to suspend the rules in order to vote on Agenda Bill 21-112A. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, happy to accept a motion on the underlying bill.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Councilmember Schaefer.
I move we accept Agenda Bill 21-112A, addendum for a contract for prosecutor services.
Second, Rednicki.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer, a second by Councilmember Rednicki. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Lieutenant Sabrin, did you have something to add? Or you had your hand raised, or starting to raise, so I'm just double checking.
Oh, no, I do not. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to temporary Agenda Bill 21-113A, temporary use duration ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor and
And
Council. Oh, sorry.
Go.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, we're going to do basically a redo, as we talked about in another staff and council meeting. The temporary use duration, we have been modifying it during the pandemic. So this will be our third go around. We've done it 2 times already. If you could do the next slide, Steve. So this is an example on the left-hand side of the temporary uses that you see for the most part in the region. This is, again, a redo of 2 sections of our temporary use duration policy, and that's in DMC 1452-020, and it's D and E. Next slide. So these are the 2 items that we would be essentially repealing temporarily for 6 months. And so D defines how many days a temporary use can exist. And currently, if you anything after 45 days requires a conditional use permit, which is a pretty hefty process. It goes through a hearing examiner. So we'd like to repeal that section again. And then section E, we'd like to repeal that because that allows the combination of the administrative portion and the conditional use portion for up to 95 days. Because this is an interim regulation, you can go to the next slide. We would be required to go to hearing again for, I think, the 3rd time. If this is approved at the first meeting in December, we would go to public hearing by February 1st, 2022. The interim control, again, can only be in place for 6 months. We would approve this by ordinance, and that ordinance is in your packet. Staff does recommend placing this item on consent for the December 7th council meeting. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, is there any reason we can't approve this tonight? Do we need a public hearing first, or?
That's a really good question, Councilmember Schaefer. I would really like to approve it on the 7th, only because we have 60 days from the time it's approved to hold the public hearing. And because the way our meetings work in January, it would put that public hearing earlier. So we're just trying to do it from a time perspective.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It's a good question.
Councilmember Naplan?
Yeah, I believe this has to do with the tents and things that the restaurants are. Yes, I see head shaking. So I visited a local restaurant and asked if we could sit outside, and they were kind of apologizing. They had no heating out there and that they were still trying to work something out with due to fire codes and things like that. And I know that was something that Councilmember Mike Remington really cared about and wanted to make sure people were safe. Are we still struggling with trying to find a balance on that, or is there anything to report?
So no, that particular business put in a gas line without a permit. So we're doing a permit, I guess, after the fact, and it has to go through building and through the city as well with inspections. So we're actually working on that currently for that particular one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to Agenda Bill 21-114A, Reserve Officer Ordinance for discussion and/or decision. Lieutenant Sabrin.
Yeah, thank you again, Mayor. Good evening, Council.
Hold on just a second. I did see our city attorney's hand up. Mr. Kenny, did you have something to add?
I just wanted to point out that I don't think actually the draft ordinance for the last item is in the packet. So I just want to make sure that when it does go on to consent, that the draft ordinance, there are 3 that are in there. They're all the signed ones from previous.
Okay.
And so just so that everybody has an opportunity to look at it, the summary is exactly how I recall it when I looked at it as you just summarized. So just make sure everybody reads it when it's in the packet for consent is my only recommendation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. All right, Lieutenant Sabrin.
Well, thank you, Mayor. So the city has been paying our reserve officer for specific duties since 2015. The 2021-2022 biennial budget includes $13,000 to cover the cost of paying the reserve officer for these duties. The 2022 salary schedule and FTE allocation table have been updated to reflect the 0.10 reserve officer FTE. Duvall Municipal Code refers to the reserve officer as an unpaid position. And DMC chapters 4.04020 hiring process and 4.10070 reserve police officers have been updated to reflect current practice. That's what I have.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Does council have any questions on this? Councilmember Napland?
Yeah, I'm still learning how the pre-meeting agenda meeting goes. I had submitted a question. I was just curious. I had noticed when I went and looked at the previous code versus what we were replacing it with, that the previous code specified that the position was not eligible for any other benefits that other employees would have. And the change shows that now the position would be eligible for benefits, just like any other part-time employee. And so I had a question ahead, and I don't know if whenever I have a question that I'd asked in the agenda or in my emails, if I need to re-ask it during the meeting or.
Oh, my response to that, council member, I will, I'm in the process of doing some research on that a little bit. And I was planning on responding to you in writing.
Okay, that's great. I just wasn't sure the process. I didn't want to, take time to ask the question again if something was happening behind the scenes to get my question answered. Yeah. Okay, so at this point, we're unsure if the eligibility for benefits will end up costing additional amounts.
I need to speak with our finance director a little bit further on the parameters of that and then get back to you. I don't have an answer for you right now.
Okay.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on unless council is comfortable enough to suspend the rules and vote on this. But since there's an outstanding question, my assumption is no. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to Agenda Bill 21-115A, Strategic Fund Resolution for discussion and/or decision. City Administrator Oppel.
So this is one that we talked about at the last meeting and at the COW. This was a initiative from council to set up a strategic fund to set aside one-time sales tax from construction revenues for one-time expenditures, sales tax from construction for anything over $180,000 plus annual inflator of the prior year, January, December, using the ENR CCI as the baseline for inflation. 2019, 2020 sales tax from construction over the baseline will be transferred to the general fund. That's $216,000, $264. Expectation for 2021, 2022 is $615,957. The one-time expenditure would be authorized. Any one-time expenditures would be authorized by council through the budget process or as an agenda item at a meeting. You'll see in the packet there is a resolution which supports this.
Does council have any follow-up questions or changes to this ordinance? Councilmember Lingle?
Mine's not really a question, but two comments, if that's okay, Mayor.
Yes.
The first comment is I want to recognize Councilmember Naplin. This has been something she's talked about for well over a year, so I'm sure we all appreciate her energy on that. And the second comment is to our new city administrator. He made, I think, a really good suggestion about how the inflator would work in the strategic fund to be with the ENR CCI. And I thought that was a great suggestion. And with that, I'm ready to make a motion.
All right, so we'll need a motion to suspend the rules first.
I'm pretty good at that. I make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second, Schaefer.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Lingle, a second by Councilmember Schaefer to suspend the rules. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, is there a motion on the underlying bill?
I make a motion to approve the strategic fund, Agenda Bill 21-115A.
Second, Naplin.
Motion by Councilmember Lingle, a second by Councilmember Naplin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to Agenda Bill 21-116A, dental benefits and orthodontia DMC change ordinance for discussion and or decision. City Administrator Apple.
So there was a note, this has been discussed a couple of times before. The city has been paying 100% of employee independent dental benefits since at least 2005. The problem is that the code doesn't cover what was expected practice. We're not sure because it goes back 16 years whether there had been an approval by council and consent and it never got turned into a code. What we're trying to do is revamp the code to fit what is current practice and is accepted practice both by our unions and our non-represented employees, that everyone's comfortable with this. The DMC 4.04.050 medical coverage doesn't reflect it. The orthodontia benefits are provided by two bargaining units, but not currently provided with non-represented employees. Cost is included in the Teamsters dental package. City pays 75% of the cost for the police guild. At the November 2 meeting, council expressed interest in providing this orthodontia benefit to non-represented employees, with the city paying 75% of the cost. The DMC 4.04.050 has been updated to reflect that the city pays 100% of employee independent dental benefits and 75% of orthodontia. If I remember right, the number is just over $1,300 at current rates.
Thank you. This is a pretty cut and dry issue, so would anyone like to make a motion to suspend the rules to vote on this evening?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second. All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Lingle and a second by Councilmember Hoag to suspend the rules. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And now happy to entertain a motion on the bill.
I'll make a motion to approve the bill, AB, oh, wait a second, I just moved to the fee resolution, sorry. I was moving right along here. I know that's something everybody likes. Agenda Bill 21-116A, amending DMC 4.04.050 medical coverage.
Second.
Great. We have a motion by Councilmember Langle, a second by Councilmember Hoag. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to first touch on Agenda Bill 21-117A, fees and charges resolution for discussion. Director Thomas.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council and members of our community. So this evening, we're going to talk about something that the city has been trying to accomplish for several years. And a huge thanks to all of our departments for coming together. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is consolidating all of our fee resolutions, ordinances, and charges into one document, and then making amendments to our policies as well. So we have a ton of existing resolutions that we're going to consolidate into. Steve, if you could go to the next slide. So you can see right here, the existing resolutions that we're going to be repealing are quite a few. Next slide, please. This is the ordinances that we're also consolidating, and then below are the code sections that we would need to amend. It is a pretty big lift. We've been working with, as I said, our departments, but also with our city attorney, just to make sure we try to get everything neatly tucked into one package. I can say that there is a possibility that we'll find one later that's kind of an outlier where we might have to amend it, but we're trying to get it correct the first time. There are a lot of fees and charges that the city has. The next slide is the 22 adjustments, the CPIU. This is just how we increase our rates every year. So an increase of average prior to year July, June is the Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue CPIU. And that is for utility rates, building permit fees, our sewer equalization, our roof permit fees, our right-of-way use fees, and our clear and grade fees. Next slide. The adjustments for our ENR ENR CCI or ICC. I should actually probably pronounce those out so that I'm not speaking gibberish to the rest of the public. Essentially, the engineering news record, construction costs index, and then the ICC is the International Code Council. So on this one, we have a couple of different approaches. The increase of average prior to year, which is January to December, that's the ENR and the CCI, and that impacts our park impact fees, our GFC, our sewer general facility charge, our water capital improvement charge, and our storm drainage charge. There is an outlier that is an increase of average prior 3-year January through December, and that's the ENR and CCI, and that's the traffic impact fee. And then adjusted twice annually by the ICC is the structural plan review. The 2022 adjustments would reflect estimated costs. So these are the things that we are actually looking at increasing our fees for. So Big Rock Ball Field back to pre-pandemic rates. Our hourly rates will be adjusted to reflect staff time and overhead. So that gets adjusted every year. Our land use application deposits, this is the revenue that we take in whenever we get a project in. It was last updated in 2012. So we're making some amendments to that. The last time they were adjusted was in 2012. And so it's been quite a while. And what we're trying to do is reflect more about what we think it'll cost to process the permit so that we're not having to do as much developer billing, that we have a large enough amount in the bank already. The sewer application fee was last updated in 1997 and increased to reflect now current costs. special event application fee were increased by $25, reflect current costs. This one will require a code change. Overhead banner fee, we are looking or we're requesting to increase that cost by $150 to reflect the current costs of labor to put those signs up. Next slide, Steve. So our next step is to hold a public hearing on December 7th, and then we'll have council discussion and direction. And if there's not action that evening, then we would look at a council discussion and action on December 14th. And then we will have ongoing work removing fees from the Duvall Municipal Code because it's embedded in several sections of the policy. Are there any questions?
Before we get to that, I just want to say thank you to Director Thomas and all of the staff. To her point, this has been several years in the making and trying to get to this point. So this is a huge achievement and a big body of work for all involved. So thank you for getting us to this point. Councilmember Napland.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just looking through it, I could not believe the work that must have gone into this. It's very impressive. So earlier today at the Finance Committee meeting, I requested that potentially we change the traffic impact fee to align with the other similar type fees and have a 2-year rolling instead of the 3-year, just for consistency's sake. It doesn't sound like anyone, this could be left over from an old index that had been used, why it was a 3-year, because it had been a more volatile index. So anyway, I wanted to put that out there. I don't know if I need to make a motion or if that's something we could just get consensus on or have discussion. And then also one last thing on the utility discounts are in here as well. And I know we're talking about potentially changing the low income discount. So is the best way to approach this if we want this adopted before the end of the year is adopt as is, even though we, potentially will adjust those maybe early next year. I'm not sure how to go forward because I would like to see those discounts increased significantly, hopefully.
Thank you. City Administrator Apple.
Well, the outstanding, I understand what you're saying, trying to get that they would all be on a 2-year basis, but we do have, the outstanding question is because the traffic impact fee is related to paving, which is very heavily connected to the volatile gas price. So that it may still be a valuable thing for us to use a 3-year rolling instead of 2-year rolling because we'll get a more reasonable capture of inflation for that subject. So I think what we need to do is do a little more research to see whether it's advisable to use a 3-year over a 2-year, even if it's not as pretty because it doesn't fit the other ones. It may be more effective in the long run. Looking at how gas prices, if they're on a more like a 3-year cycle, it makes more sense to use a 3-year average than a 2-year average.
So if the other ones are on the 2-year versus a 3-year, are you saying that our park impact fee, sewer, GFC, water, storm are very volatile because they're all based on gas prices, or?
Yeah, because they're not based on gasoline as thing. When you do asphalt and you're doing things, you're using it's connected to prices in their subject, which are much more volatile, and that's why the fees are different. That I think we just have to look into it and make sure that it makes sense. I'm not against the idea of making it 2 years to be in line with everyone else, but there's probably a reason why it was used as 3-year. We just have to make sure that if that's a valid reason still, or if it's not a valid reason.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or feedback from council?
I had the question about the utility discount rates, if we should address that now or wait.
I go ahead and ask the question. I don't know that staff will be ready to answer yet, but please go forward.
Oh, yeah, I did ask the question. I just was trying to understand if there was an intention to potentially increase the discount. Do we need to do that now? Because this is when we're going through the process of updating the fee schedule, which includes utility discount. Is now the time to request to increase the discount, or are we going to address it later? Right? Because I would make a proposal to increase it now, if now is the appropriate time.
Director Laniszewski.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. I would probably pull Mr. Kenny in for this. I think the intent of all this is to make sure we have everything ready for a new year and have one consolidated element. I think at any given time we can amend any one piece of this entire pie, which for streamlining purposes would be preferred. Not that we can't have a discussion at the next meeting on the fee type itself. It's focused on utility rates, which take direction we can get that. I think it's not that difficult, but to pull it out might be problematic just in general right now. So I haven't seen Daniel turn his light back on, but there he is.
I'll just quickly chime in that you can always do amendments to the resolution. There are certain fees that are included that may have specific process, so we'll just need to be mindful of that. But yes, you could absolutely in late January or February or whatever, have that as an agenda item, talk about it, get direction and make that change. But as Steve said, this is the consolidation and the cleanup that would be done.
And I would certainly add back to the 2-year versus 3-year for Councilmember Naplin's first question. I think the 3-year under the current index smooths it out more than the 2-year, which I think was your point, that the old way was a 3-year smoothing on the WashDOT construction index, which was oil and petroleum based, which did swing wildly, which made sense why we had 3 years over it. So I don't know that anybody is opposed to moving that to 2 years, kind of like we discussed today. And if we can get some notes, I think, like I said, I think we have a dead week. We could probably get some notes in that little agenda bill on what that difference in a 2 versus a 3-year average would have been, and go forward as is, and somebody can make a motion to amend that one item with a 2-year instead. Blah blah blah, no big deal. So,
Thank you. Ms. Thomas had her hand up, and then we'll get to the other council members.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just to go back to Councilmember Naplin's question about utility rate discounts, what I would recommend is that we add that to a Finance Administration Committee agenda in January so that we can start the process of that work. It was clear at our COW meeting this week that was of interest and a consensus of the council.
That sounds great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Great. So with what Ms. Thomas has stated, are there any further questions or comments at this point? Councilmember Lingle?
Well, first of all, thanks to Director Thomas there, because she brought forward what I was going to mention. But the other thing I was going to say is it helpful in any way for Councilmember Naplin's proposal for council to see that proposal in time to keep the other fee changes in line with your schedule? Is there a way to do that so we could make a decision on some of that so that it was in line with the first of the year goal? I mean, she's got her proposal. Is there a way for council to have that in a COW?
Ms. Thomas?
I would like to say that we could accomplish that before the end of the year, but I think it honestly would be difficult. We're holding a public hearing at the next meeting. And so I think if we were looking at changing anything, we'd want to include that in our public hearing. And we also want to give the opportunity of the finance and utility department to evaluate those discounts. So I still would recommend, but go moving forward with what we have and knowing that in January, the FAC committee will take a look at it and then bring it back to a COW.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Moving on to Agenda Bill 21-103B, the ordinance for the 2022 property tax levy for discussion and decision. City Administrator Apple.
So as was mentioned, it needs to be decided today because it has to be into King County what the vote is by November 30th. So this is the final touch on this that can be done. I don't know if we have the presentation that can come up. I don't know who has, do you have it, Steve, or he's looking? Essentially, this is the one where this is the same one as normal. The question had been whether we use the 1% or not. The public hearing was accomplished on October 19th. November 2nd, there was a presentation to council again. The total levy is $2,121,499, which is 1.15684 for every $1,000 of assessed value. The property tax ordinance includes a 1% increase, which is the maximum increase allowed by Washington law, provided on additional $16,999 of tax revenue. New construction is another $67,735, which is re-levy of prior year funds of $2,387. So that gets rolled back in. And a levy request must be finalized by November 30th. This levy includes $20,000 for changes to new construction or state utilities. Reminder that the county can adjust down, but it will not adjust up. So that's why we use $20,000 as a place marker for that.
Does council have any questions, or are you ready to take action? This is actually, I think you would consider it a third touch because we had original introduction and public hearing. So even though it's listed as a B, it actually is a 3. Councilmember Bridnicki.
I'm comfortable to move forward and support this because we have done it consistently for many years. It's a very tiny, small, it's amount that allows us as, you know, as a city to work with the increases that we have to deal with when we consider things, price increases on things and that sort of thing. So we've done it for many years. It's not a big impact and I'm very comfortable with it.
Thank you. In order to move this, we do need a motion in a second.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Councilmember Schaefer.
I move we approve Agenda Bill 2021 dash. It actually has XX in the in here, but it's the ordinance annual ad valorem property tax levy for fiscal year 2022.
Second, Bridnicki.
We have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer and a second by Councilmember Bridnicki to approve Agenda Bill 21-103B. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 No.
And Councilmember Lingle has stepped away from the screen. Councilmember Lingle, how do you vote?
I'm here. I'm here. I can't see any of you though.
Okay, so can you let us know what your vote is on this agenda bill?
I said yes. I just can't,
Okay,
I mean,
thank
with,
you.
yeah, I can't see any, I can see you now, but I can't see anyone else.
All right, thank you. So we had 5 yeas, 1 nay by Councilmember Naplin, and the motion is approved. Councilmember McHenry?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't hear you ask for nays, so mine was also a nay. I did not say aye.
Okay. Councilmember, so we have a 4-2 in favor of the property tax levy with Councilmember McHenry and Councilmember Naplin voting nay. Moving on to the Agenda Bill 21-102B, the 2021-2022 biennial budget mid-biennium review and modifications. As of Tuesday, we had consensus based on a couple of changes that were made. So hopefully we can move this along quickly. Mr. Oppel.
So the changes that were asked for with the two positions to be reviewed again in January have been made by Finance Director Mason. You saw the timeline where we were before. Sorry, so we went backwards. Go forward. No. So at the November 16 Council Council Committee of the Whole, following changes were made to the biennium budget adjustments, ARPA program coordinator and the communications manager. Salaries and benefits were removed from the budget adjustments, which they have been by the finance director. FTEs removed from the FTE allocation table and 2022 salary schedule. They can be put back in at a later time once we have a better feel for them. Salaries and benefits of the assistant city engineer and the police clerk were adjusted to reflect an April 1st, 2021 start date. That is from the police chief and Director Liznicki. That was when they believe their best estimate of when the start date would be for assistant city engineer and police clerk. General fund overhead and internal service fund charges for service allocations were adjusted to reflect the changes in the FTEs and those timelines. A formula error was caught and corrected to reflect the depreciation charge for 2021 truck purchase. That was what was mentioned before from finance. The finance committee report out was that it was incorrectly being charged in the asset management, so we had to correct that. And then the general fund transfer to the street fund was decreased by $10,000.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, just a note that the actual agenda bill itself still has references to 6 positions in a number of places. So it does need a little cleaning up.
So if it's just in the agenda bill and it's correct in the ordinance, we won't need to make any actual changes.
Oh, okay. It's just the agenda bill.
Yeah, so if it's just the agenda bill, this is what happens when you rush things through. So for example, our legislative agenda isn't on here. So as long as the ordinance is correct, we can move forward.
Okay, good.
Mayor, can you see me?
I cannot see you. I see a desk.
A desk?
Mm-hmm.
Really,
Yes.
That's all you see?
I
Wow.
think your camera direction is flipped.
Yep.
And so I think you have to go on your settings.
There you go.
Your
I
video-
just switched it again. Can you see me now?
Yeah. Yes,
Yep.
we can see you now.
Yes.
All right.
We saw Thread. It was really pretty.
Oh, good. That's my Christmas sweater. I've already got it on.
All right. So is council ready to make a motion on the budget as amended?
Yes.
Councilmember Naplan?
I think Councilmember Lingle had a good suggestion earlier today to potentially put a note in there. I don't remember exactly how she was trying to address it, but that before we go out for the RFP for the financial analysis, that perhaps we look at the dollar amount on that ahead of time. And so even if we adopt the budget as is, maybe we could put a note in there that just says that before the funds are released for that, you know, a council can deliberate on if we want to increase the budget on that. So that we don't have to increase the budget now and hold anything up, but it puts a point in there to bring it back to have a discussion about what exactly we're trying to get out of that and how much we're willing to pay.
Mayor?
Just a quick point of clarification. You can do that. It's not necessary because if it's over the budgeted amount, it has to come back to council anyways. So just a side note on that. Councilmember Lingle?
Well,
And then
yeah, I
city
mean,
administrator.
Councilmember, can you hear me or see me, any of that? Okay, here's what I'm after, I want to achieve. And we can talk about ways to achieve it. I think we learned some lessons when we did the last RFP. And one of the lessons that I learned, but is also very consistent with the way we do public works bidding, is we had a very wide range in the amount people were proposing. And so that tells me that there was something we need to rethink in the RFP, which we've already decided to do. What I want to see is that we can go out with that RFP with a higher amount of money available to us. And I have a number of reasons for that, but that's what I'm trying to, that's my objective. And a budget note could do it, I suppose, without amending the budget. But I think it became very clear to me in that process that given the things that council wants to achieve and needs to achieve with that research is not going to be achieved by $20,000. It's not going to happen. And so the best way, of course, would be to add money into the budget now. And I was thinking we would go with an extra $30,000 for that work. I don't want to hold up the budget, however. Councilmember Naplin is correct in that regard. But I could give more reasons, but in the interest of time and moving things along, that's what I'm trying to achieve.
Thank you. City Administrator Oppel.
I think, one of the things I might throw out is there's the option of either putting it in, changing that number from 20,000 to 50,000, or since we already have two positions which will need to be revisited in January, that we at that point look at that as a combined, because the RFP won't be going out for a while anyway. And so the question about allocation of money for the RFP could be dealt with at a time in which we're starting to review the RFP before it goes out. I'm just saying that's another option, is to say we're already going to be touching this again. There is some feel that yes, these other two positions just need more work. So we're already going to be doing a budget adjustment in January, February timeframe. So I'm just throwing out that that's another option as well for everyone to think about.
Any other council member thoughts on this item? Councilmember Hoag?
Couldn't we just do a budget? I'm back to the budget note, but couldn't we just do a budget note that says that this is going to come back to council? Because I believe it's going to end up costing more than $20,000 as well. So I think that it needs to be brought forward. I don't know how to put it in a budget note, but I would want to make sure that council is going to be okaying or reviewing this particular item, because I know it was so contentious before. So I just think it'd be nice to have something in there that that we all understand that it is going to be, we are going to probably need to come back and increase that budget line item. So, yeah.
Councilmember McHenry?
I get the feeling that council's ready to move forward with this. So in the interest of that, and our finance director not being here tonight, is it the easiest thing for someone to amend or add a budget note so that we can move through this quickly?
I think that you can simply put a motion on the floor to approve the budget and add a budget note acknowledging that the RFP is likely to be more than budgeted, and that it's agreed that that at that time it comes back to council for discussion, because council will have to amend it if it's above 20,000, period. It doesn't technically do anything, but if that's what it takes to make council feel comfortable, that's just fine. Councilmember Naplin? And then we haven't heard from Councilmember Bridnicki, so I want to make sure we hear from her on this as well.
Just to further clarify, I think the point that Councilmember Langle is making is that she would like it to come to council, not just to approve a contract, but before an RFP is issued, which is technically a different request. When you put the dollar amount in the RFP of what you're expecting to spend, potentially it impacts who is willing to respond. If the dollar amount is 20,000 and the expectation of tasks is more, people will just, I'm not going to bother with that. So perhaps the best request would be that before an RFP is issued, the RFP comes to council, and at that time we can look at the scope, we can look at the dollar amount before it's issued. So I'd like, I guess, once a motion is made to adopt the budget, I can make a motion to accomplish that.
Great. Councilmember Brodnicki and Councilmember Schaefer, we haven't heard from you.
So I'm fine to, this is, we're talking about the mid-biennium review here, and from what we've looked at and all of the data provided, I'm very comfortable supporting passing this tonight. We have the flexibility to make adjustments. You can put notes in if you like, but it's something that I think Dana's done an excellent job of facilitating all the information and organizing it and cleaning it all up, and the committees looked at it. So I'm really very comfortable with getting it through tonight.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Councilmember Brodnicki just said, I am in favor of getting this through tonight, and with appropriate adjustments, notes, whatever is needed. And that way we can better focus on those specific items in January or February.
Councilmember Lengo?
Yeah, I wanted to add another reason why I think this is really important to come to council, and I appreciate the interest or willingness to do a budget note. And one of the things we have learned going through the procurement process has to do with unique RFPs, which have long-lasting potential impacts and risks to the city. There were 4 categories of types of consultants that we identified that will likely come forward in the procurement policy. We'll have to see how that all shakes out. But I mean, this is an extremely important thing that that will impact, if we do it well, it will really give us a strategic, a financial oriented strategic path to doing some really big things that some of which we know we have to do, and other ones that we hope to do. And I think to the other point about, this was actually a point that our new city administrator brought up, that we definitely could have the benefit of more people applying this time. I know the firm that previously has been involved with our bonds was not able to apply this time. And they're a really good example of a firm that is licensed by Security and Exchange, so they have additional credentials. That's the kind of firm we hope will apply. So that feeds into my concern as well. So I would love a budget note. And with this being coming back to council, and doing that as soon as possible after the first of the year.
All right, so we still don't have a motion on the budget. So in order to make that note, we need a motion in a second.
I'd like to move that we approve Agenda Bill 21-102B.
A second.
Henry.
All right, so we had multiple seconds, but I saw Councilmember Brodnicki's mouth moving first. So we have a motion by Councilmember Hogue, a second by Councilmember Brodnicki. Now would be the time to make a brief amendment, adding a budget note.
I move to add a budget note directed to the financial analysis of the city, that we will take that up as a council after the first of the year. And at that time, revisit the amount of funds allocated to the activity. That's a motion to amend, I guess, as a note.
Second.
Right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, is everyone ready to vote on the budget? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes, and I will just make a quick note. I believe that was the first unanimous vote on a budget or amended mid-biennium budgets we've had in the last 4 years. So thank you all. I also want to say thank you to council for fully approving for the 6 positions that we put forward. That is a huge win for our staff and will provide significant benefit, not just to them, but a huge benefit to the community that we serve. And that speaks to our commitment to serving the residents of our community. So thank you all for that, and very much appreciated, especially getting it done in the middle of November. So that's also a big achievement. We haven't had one done until the last meeting in December in 4 years. So this is yet another big accomplishment. So thank you all for that. Moving on to our next item of unfinished business, Agenda Bill 21-104B, the Water Comprehensive Plan. Mr. Laniszewski.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Steve Laniszewski, Public Works, any remaining citizens. A quick note just on the previous item, recognizing I'm not sure how she did it, the enormous amount of work Director Mason put involved. She's not here tonight. The presentation was there. We were just driving her presentation. All the numbers to change from Tuesday to now were in input. I hope she slept in the last day and a half, so a well-deserved flight tonight out of here. So I think just recognizing that is a ton of work to make those changes, and she's very good at her job. Moving on from that, in your packet again is the Water System Comprehensive Plan. We're through the comment period, SEPA period. What is different from this package between now and the last visit at council on the 2nd was we did receive a comment from Snoqualmie Tribes. That was provided in the packet as well as a staff response. And just briefly on the Snoqualmie Valley Tribes points, they're very interested in making sure we are taking care of the water, so reducing our leakage. We are working diligently on that as we have been chasing leaks, using leak detection services, repairing and responding to calls as we receive them. So we are doing our best to do that. Annually, we do report to Seattle Public Utility on our consumption versus our purchase, so there is that delta. We have metered more accurately, and again, having the dedicated water worker, he's able to help and work with Mr. Fisher as a superintendent to coordinate activities on all the projects. So now the automated meter reading systems we have for in situ, existing residential and commercial settings, we have put that in place for our roaming meters that serve the construction sites. So that's instantaneously captured, where before it was manually read. So if we did a meter read and it had been a few months because they don't normally use a lot of water, or just time goes by and it was moved from site to site, we don't worry about that anymore, because as we drive by we collect that and then send the invoices. So some of those projects could use 50,000 cubic feet of water a month, which we wouldn't capture, and then we report to SPU and we're kind of missing that, so it counts as leakage. So trying to tidy all that up. The tribe was also in recommending, the city do as much conservation outreach education as possible. We did get one set of comments from Councilmember Naplin, so I think we have no problem with that. It's just recognizing, budget implications and outreach. And I think right sizing the staffing from removing some of the stormwater programming off of everybody's plate to being able to do other outreach. And I know, we should and can do more, whether you have received your new cart or not. We're trying to do outreach for sewer use and what you put down your drains. You have a nice new shiny sticker on your garbage can that, well, some of you do. Some of you have had it put in the can. I hope you put it on it, and we are working with Waste Management on fixing that. So that was one of their elements. Reclaimed water, they're very interested in the city using reclaimed water since that saves on water consumption, and water is a natural resource. So those are some of the points. We did respond to them. Nothing has changed in our document itself. We are hopeful to move forward, and we need council's approval to move forward in adopting this to then go to the state and the county and then the state to get it adopted through those channels. Did I hit on everything? One other question kind of relative to conservation and leakage is the meter consumption. We were having a lot of zero reads, and now we have very interesting data that just came in today because Sarah was able to put some information together, but the zero reads are up, but why they're up is they are part of, and this goes back to what Laura and I had been working on and Larissa relative to understanding meter and permit issuance versus occupancy. So with all the new building permits issued, right, we drop a meter, there's no consumption until someone moves in. So until you get over the 100 CCFs on a meter, it doesn't read. So it's a zero until it hits 100.01, right? So when they're doing plumbing inspections and work on a home, they never get above the 100 CCF. So right now, for example, this month alone, we had 221 rereads for January 2021. Of that, I have 144 zero reads on new construction. So technically, we have 77 zero reads, which is low consumption, snowbirds, that kind of thing for January. So we will try to ferret out how the numbers actually jive, but there's a lot of, you have to look at every meter in the system and determine if someone's there or not, or if it's under construction or not. So good news is, I think we have the data and we should be less based on just pulling new meters out of kind of the count. So let's see, no other questions were received. And I would say if there are no other questions, staff's recommendation is council adopt the ordinance to amend the municipal code section 902-090, adopting the 2021 comprehensive water system plan for the city of Duvall. And then staff can move it forward to the reviewing bodies.
Great. We've done a lot of work on this. Is council ready to make a motion and approve so that Mr. Laniszewski can take the next steps in the process? Councilmember Schaefer?
Let's see. First of all, I am in favor of adopting this as is. I did want to bring everyone's attention to the letter that we received from the Snoqualmie tribe. However, I don't know how many of you actually read that because it was actually buried down in the packet. I didn't see it until Jennifer actually brought it to my attention. But the Snoqualmie tribe had some excellent suggestions as far as water conservation is concerned, things that we could do better or differently than we're currently doing. Many of those are policy-based, and I really think fall on the shoulders of the council that we need to take some kind of action on those. There's one or two that may be procedure-based as well, but bottom line is I think we need to take their suggestions very seriously and chalk that up for a more serious consideration early next year. I know it's hard for many of us, myself included, to get our mind around that when it rains every day here this time of year. But nonetheless, water conservation is important all year round, not just in the summer. So I think that should be put on I think we have a, what do we call it, a to-do list or holding, future item list. I think this should be added to that for the council.
Thank you, Councilmember Schaefer. Director Laniszewski, you had your hand up, and then Councilmember Lingle.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Schaefer. One of the points too, I didn't talk about, I've already spoken to Laura, Director Thomas, about some of the xeriscaping. That's code stuff. Planning does run the landscape code, and her and I are more than happy to, fit that into the work plan as we move forward, because I think we're both doing some standards updates in the next, staff. Public Works is still behind. So I think that's something we have full support of. Some of the simple implementations from our parks, right? Rain sensors. It's just upgrading controls, which we haven't set as a priority. So that kind of thing, very easy. Of course, it takes a little money and time, but I'm certain, we have that now. And those are very good points. And that's all. Thank you.
Great. No, thank you, Director.
Councilmember Lingle, did you have an additional comment?
Yeah, I was just going to use this as a bit of a quick learning moment since we're doing so well on time, which is that this is a really good example of something where council can, I don't want to use the word remand, but can instruct the Public Works Committee to come back. We don't typically ask committees to come with recommendations, but it's a good example of how we might use committees a little differently to do these fleshing out of deeper, impactful policies. And this was something that our new city administrator has mentioned several times. So rather than just have it be on a parking list, it might be something after the first of the year we actually direct Public Works Committee to work on. Council can do that to move things along. So just a comment on that.
Councilmember McHenry.
Yeah, I appreciate Councilmember Schaefer and Lingle's comments. I think that's a good idea, but I look forward to maybe the directors working together for a little bit just to figure out maybe what exactly would make sense there if it's more than one committee. And I agree, I think for sure Public Works, but yeah, I think that'd be a great idea for a committee to take on, but I think we'd have a little more better idea of the scope of that, come the new year.
Yep, totally agree.
Great. Councilmember Napland.
Yeah, that's great. I'd be supportive of that. The one suggestion I had made, to be specific, was our irrigation system seems to sort of run without being aware of the weather or some other things. And I think that is mostly due to, like what Director Laniszewski was saying, there's different controls that are smarter than others. And so maybe that would be an investment that council would be willing to do. I just think we should lead by example. So when we're sending, putting out posts on Facebook saying, hey, water deeply, water every 3 days, make sure your sprinkler systems aren't running when it's raining. I think it would, I would feel a lot better if we were sending that out, and the city was also doing that with our own irrigation system. So however council can be supportive of something along those lines, I hope we can look into that. And secondly, one suggestion, it was kind of in the joint presentation, I think maybe in the last packet for both the sewer and water, that it suggested to look, kind of go back and look at these plans, the financial plan. And I think it said in a couple years, or I can't remember exactly what it said, but I'm just wondering how that works, because a lot of times these plans get, done once every 10 years and we don't really do a deep dive, or we built up very large balances, which tells me perhaps we were collecting more than we needed. And I feel strongly that, we charge ratepayers what we need. And obviously that needs to include, capital investment too, but I don't want to overcharge. And so my understanding is the financial analysis that went into this was very conservative. We know there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of new homes being built, and that will generate more revenue. Now, the plan was conservative because we don't want to count on, count our chickens before they hatch or count our eggs or whatever that saying is. So is there a plan for a timeline of revisiting the numbers? Do we need to have rate increases go up by CCI? Maybe we don't, if we look at this in a couple of years. Anyway, it was definitely recommended by the council, the consultant to revisit the financial plan. And I'd like to see a timeline. I don't know if that needs to be part of the resolution adopting this, that we will revisit the financial plan every so many years. Doesn't need to be a deep dive, but just look at it. We're bringing in way more revenue than we thought we needed. Maybe we can put a pause on rate increases.
Director Laniszewski?
Yes, thank you. Good point. And I think, I don't know how the simplest way, but what I would propose is, right, I have a boss now who sits here every day of the week. I would say if he's going to chore me with that, I'm already making a note on, the draft paperwork as we will begin next year's budget cycle. And under professional services, I think all three utilities, right, should get a look at cost efficiencies. You do it every, for each one of them at the same time. So every 2 years, which I would, propose in whatever going to be 2022 next year, we're working under till 2023 when we're preparing the 2023-2024 budget. It's just part of the professional services. I have a line that says, financial analysis. I get a good number at FCS Group, and it's just something that becomes part of the biannual work plan, which is once every other year. So I don't see any problem with that. If you want to entrust that to Kevin and I, like I said, I made a note. I have a paper budget. We start with that when we do our computer budget, and I'd be more than happy to facilitate that. It's part of what we should do, and it should just be normal operations anyway. So
that's fantastic. If you're making a commitment right now in a public meeting, I'll write myself a little note.
I'm sure you will.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm excited to see something like that happen. Thank you for looking into that.
So is Councilor ready to make a motion and approve this plan?
I move to approve the plan.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Lingle, a second by Councilmember Hoag to approve Agenda Bill 21-104B, the Water Comprehensive Plan. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, we do have an executive closed session for 10 minutes to discuss the evaluation of the qualifications of an applicant for public employment pursuant to RCW 42.30110.sub1.sub-G. We do not expect to take action after this meeting. But the council will return formally to adjourn at the end of that session. If it lasts more than 10 minutes, the clerk will make the announcement to the public that we are extending that session. So with that, we will convene to executive session.
Mayor, if you're speaking, it looks like you're on mute.
Thank you. It said I wasn't, and then it said it, obviously I was. So we, Councilmember Lingle, I'm not sure if she's going to rejoin, but we do have a quorum. So unless there are objections, we are adjourned.
Bye, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.